So yeah, my name's Evan Golden, as Patrick said. I'm the director of engineering here at Trundle. I also run our professional services in North America. And the topic today is actually something I'm passionate about. I find it quite interesting, and it's surprisingly not talked about as often as one would think. And it's around Kanban. Most webinars and conversations revolve around Scrum and Safe, which are both great. But Kanban is a framework that I'm super excited to talk about. And really, what we're going to do today is talk about Kanban in terms of theory, and we'll walk through some slides. Excuse me. And then we're going to get into a demo of how you can do it, use Jira software to implement what I find to be a good Kanban solution. So we're going to get started. So before we get into Kanban, we find it's really, really important to understand like two sets of principles. And the first one is lean, excuse me. And the second one is agile. So let's start with lean, which you're seeing here on the slide. And it was started by Taiichi Ono. If you're familiar with the Toyota way, really what he was trying to do via lean principles and Kanban was an aim to control and manage work and inventory at every stage of production optimally, okay? And the goal was to remove that waste and get that value to the customer as fast as possible. So let's walk through this cycle real quick. First, you have to understand what your value is. Once you define value, if you're a software development company, maybe it's those features that you've done a ton of market research on, you've interviewed customers, you've studied your competitors, and you identified features that will definitely generate some value to your customer. So you got that identified and understood. And then everything else can be identified as waste, right? So next, once you identified your value, you want to map your value stream. So what are the steps to get that value to the customer? But not only identifying those steps, but also taking those steps and measuring how long it takes to complete each step and how long those handoffs are in between each step. It's all really valuable metrics and information to have and capture over time, because then you can always look to improve. Once we map our value stream, we're going to go ahead and create flow. All right. And what's flow? So flow, I find to be one of the most important metrics to gather and really just principles to understand over time, because really what the goal is here is to maintain a steady flow of that value through your workflow, through your value stream to the customer. If it's interrupted, it'll slow down that value. So we don't want it to interrupt, because developers absolutely hate when their flow is interrupted, and this, because obviously it slows down their work and it slows down the delivery of those features. So once we establish flow, then we want to, or once we create flow, we want to establish pull. And what we mean by that, this is number 4 here on the slide. What we mean by that is we work on an item as we have the capacity to work on it. So there's 2 great books. One of them I'll talk about a little more than the other. One of them is called Project to Product by Dr. Mick Kirsten. He's the founder and CEO of TaskTop, which is a value stream management tool. But the other book that I really like and I recommend that you take a look at is called Making Work Visible by Dominica de Grandes. And she talks about this concept of time thieves. And the 5 time thieves are too much work in progress, conflicting priorities. So too much work in progress means that you're working on too many things at the same time, which means you're less likely to get any one of those things done as fast as you would if you were working on one thing at a time. Conflicting priorities, meaning that if everything is a priority 1, nothing's really a priority 1. Unknown dependencies, we start working on something and then we identify that we have all these blockers in the way. Unplanned work will basically take over your time to work on planned work, and therefore not delivering those planned features on time potentially. And neglected work, how much work is sitting in your wait status because you're waiting on another teammate, you're waiting on a vendor. Those are all identified as time thieves in that book. And what those do is they basically disrupt flow, okay? So finally, we want to seek perfection. And really what we mean here, it's a strong word, right? But really what we mean here is relentless improvement. We're trying to constantly get better. And Get better is not necessarily just speed. Get better is also a level of quality. Like we constantly want to get better. It's not enough to identify waste and develop a pull system of flow. They are critical, but we need to get better, and we fortunately have some metrics that can help us with that. You know, we talk about throughput, cycle, and lead time, and we'll get more into those in a little bit. So in 1938, Deming, basically a huge thought leader in the space, and he came up with the Deming Wheel. It was also called the Deming Cycle. He labeled it as Plan, Do, Study, Act, and it's later been renamed to Plan, Do, Check, Act, which you could see here. And super important to understand, because plan is to identify your goal, right? So we're first identifying what it is we want to do. Do is we take components of that plan and we implement them. Notice we're not doing all of the plan. We're taking components of the plan. Study is we're monitoring outcomes. So we're looking for progress. We're looking for success, problems, and areas of improvement. And finally, act. We're closing that cycle. We're integrating our learning into the process, which can adjust the goal, right? So the idea here is if we do this often and fast, we learn faster. So the more components of that plan we deliver, the faster we can learn about those components, adjust the plan, and keep going over and over again. The faster we learn, the faster we can respond to change.